record on the computer. So Graham is now recording the meeting. We've got it.
We've all been told about it, a little notice.
Yes, and the recording marker in the corner as well. So Andrew, did you have something, did you say something then? Somebody claimed you had something to say? Where's chat? It's by share screen. It's on the, anyway, it's in the pop-up menu for the middle bottom button. The host goes, no, it wasn't there. It was hiding in, for each person, like I can pick anybody in the participants list and then choose whether they're allowed to record, so I can do it individually, which is a better way of doing it. Okay, anyway, let us go to, so I go share screen again. We can have a look at something then. So share my desktop. Right. And we go back to, I don't want that anymore. That'll do. I'll use that for now, or just briefly bring up Capital Apple, which is hiding here somewhere. That should be there. No, I think I've closed it. Let's go. There's some Capital Apple. There we go. Okay. So, having just spent the last week writing and rewriting 2 weeks, this article, every time Apple decided to release something else and invalidate what I'd written, I'll just go very quickly through the major announcements that Apple did in mid-September is the goal here. So, easy way of doing this is if we look at, can I hide that somewhere? It's in the way. How do I drag it? Can I drag it somewhere else? No, probably easier if I just move the window down slightly. So it's not occupying that part. Okay. That whole thing. So if we go to Apple's newsroom website, we can go back to all the press releases from the 16th and just to remind us of what we're talking about. So the main thing is Apple announced were the Series 6 Apple Watch, the Apple Watch SE, Apple Fitness Plus, which is a new service which was tied to the Apple Watch, but also uses other Apple devices as a display. So not available yet, it's coming later in the year. So I can't even, apart from looking at a web page, we can't do much with that one. Apple One, which is a multiple services bundle. So if you happen to want all of Apple services, you can get them for a cheaper price. As well as the 8th generation entry-level iPad and the 4th generation iPad Air. So those are the major products that got announced. They also released the new versions of iOS and iPad OS and TV OS and Watch OS, but not Mac OS yet. Though, as I've noted in my article, they have a week later, or in a bit, released bug fix updates, and at the same time they released a macOS Catalina 10.15.7 update that nobody was anticipating because they didn't announce it in advance by giving developers a pre-release version. So nobody knew it was coming until it arrived, and then everybody went, oh, okay, now what does this mean? That was one of the things that I had to rewrite my article because that now invalidated everything I'd written. So macOS updates. So yep, that's been fun. So what we've probably the easiest thing to do here is just have a look at the individual web pages for each of these products and any questions that people have got. So now I've got to find them again. iPad, I've had them open all week and now I've got to work out which order they are. So Apple Watch Series 6 was the first one. So before I get too deep into this, can I just have a quick show of hands? How many people are actually interested in hearing much about the Apple Watch? Can I just, one or two, three? How many people remotely? Is there any, a few of you at least? Okay. What I've done in my article in Capital Apple is I've given an introductory sort of overview to remind people about the concept of the Apple Watch. So if you have a look at that at some point, I'm not going to repeat all that now because it will take too long, but I think that's on page 7 of Capital Apple. I've done an Apple Watch, a recap, which sort of gives you an overview of what you might want to use an Apple Watch for and some idea of history and that sort of thing. So that, I'll skip past all of that what I want to concentrate on is what's new this year. So what we've got is we're in basically the 5th year, now the 6th generation of Apple Watch. So Apple has been doing a new series of Apple Watch every year, numbered series 0 nominally for the first one. They released series 1 and 2 at the same time, which confused the issue, but then after that there's been a new one each year. So we had series 3, series 4, series 5, series 6. At series 4, they changed the physical design of the watch so that they used to have 38 and 42 millimeter sizes. Now it's 40 and 44. Effectively, it got slightly lower profile and slightly wider. So the face got slightly bigger, but also the screen got closer to the corners. So it's not actually that much bigger than the models it replaced. So for those who are here, let's take it off so you can see it. That's my Apple Watch Series 5. So we're using an Apple, and I can never remember the names of the blasted things. This is one of the various, I think it's the sports loop that I've got attached to at the moment. So that's basically a Velcro, easy fitting, removable loop. So that just goes over my wrist, go the right way, and attaches, and it's reasonably flexible. I originally had a Series 0 Apple Watch, which was the very, very original one. And I've got that one in stainless steel, because I prefer stainless steel watches, but I decided not to bother for the Series 5. They actually got rid of the stainless steel ones for a couple of years because they were cellular only, and we didn't have cellular in New Zealand. We do now, so they've brought them back again. And I'm not interested in spending more on a watch at this point. I just wanted to get a cheaper aluminium model. I didn't bring my original one with me, but I have got the strap to show you what the other one's strap looks like. Hang on a second. So here is the sport band. So this is the standard one that comes with the Apple Watch. So I've got this loose from the watch so you can see the pieces of it. So you can see there it's got a little wee metal clip on the end. Those two end bits basically slot into slots on either side of the Apple Watch. And then when it goes around your wrist, this particular one tucks in through the gap there and has a whole series of holes on it for sizing adjustments. So you can pick which size it fits and then you just clip it in place. And then once that's wrapped around, imagine that's attached to the watch on the other side. So that gives you the wrist sizing mechanism. And the idea is that reasonably quickly, I can take off my watch, find the right thing to push, slide if I can push it properly. Yeah, here we go. So I can slide the strap off and then just slide a new strap into it in its place. So you can easily change the bands easily within about a minute or so. So it's reasonably quick anyway. So you can basically have buy lots of bands, change them to suit your whim as to what color or style or type of band you want to wear. You can also buy multiple Apple Watches and use the same band on several ones. So I have, as an experiment, connected my original Milanese loop metal stainless steel band to my aluminium black Apple Watch. Looks silly, but it works. So as long as you stick within the same size, they all fit together. So there's several options and they range considerably in price. The cheapest Apple Watches of the latest generation are generally around about $700. That's with the aluminium model with the cheapest straps, and they price up to around about $2,000 if you get the stainless steel models with the most expensive options, which are like the all-metal link bracelets. So that gives you a sort of rough idea of the price range. So what we've had this year is every year, basically, Apple's doing the sort of the incremental upgrade pattern as they have with all their products. So once you've actually got an Apple Watch, there's not a lot of point buying the next year's model because it's only got a few improvements. It gets more tempting to buy the second year later model because there's more improvements. 3 years later is significantly more improvements. And by the time you get up to 4 years, it's like you're getting a whole new watch, is sort of the theory. In terms of software support, the original Apple Watch and the Series 1 and 2 all got 4 years of software updates. So from the 2015-ish, when I bought my first one, it stopped getting updates basically year before last. I think it was about 3.5 years for the original Apple Watch. After that, it kept working, but it was missing out on new features. Also, the battery was aging, and it was getting to the point where it was actually a nuisance to keep using my original watch. So you should probably only assume you get about 4 years out of them anyway, unless you want to replace the battery. Why buy one is explained in my article. They haven't waited to send it yet, of course, because I didn't actually send it out as I expected to. So basically, to summarise very briefly, the main reason to buy them is for notifications. Rather than having to look at your phone all the time, you get messages popping up on your watch, so you can easily see if somebody sends you a text message, your watch bleeps, you can just have a quick glance at it and decide whether you want to deal with it. You can answer phone calls with your watch rather than having to go and find your phone if you left it in another room, that sort of thing. And health and fitness is the other major application of them. So exercise tracking, encouraging you to meet stand goals, move goals, exercise goals, workouts, measurements, that sort of thing. More recent models have added more and more sort of fitness sensors. So you've got things like heart rhythm sensors, so it can detect things like atrial fibrillation, for example, and alert you if for particular types of arrhythmia that it can actually detect. Some of the recent models have added an ECG feature, so you can actually do a 2-point ECG by holding your finger on it and waiting a certain amount of time, and it will actually give you a graph measurement of your heart's electrical signal, and you can give that to your doctor, and it means that it's another way of measuring it while you aren't actually in a medical setting. They did fall detection, and having fallen while wearing my watch, I can say it works beautifully. Basically, it detects that you've fallen down because you suddenly had a change of elevation, and it taps you on the wrist and asks you, "Are you okay?" And it then does it again. And in my case, when I fell down, I wasn't ready to respond to it the first time because I was still working out which way was up. The second time, it said, I think you've fallen, are you okay? Or something like that. And then it started doing a countdown. If you don't respond within the X amount of time, it's going to make an emergency services call. It actually rings 111 for you as long as you have your phone with you. I think I had set it up. I think you turn the feature on, but apart from that, basically, as long as I have my phone with me and the phone wasn't damaged, the watch would talk to the phone would ring emergency services. The emergency services would be sent my location via GPS from GPS, so they would know where I was, even if I couldn't talk to them. Then that would let, well, yeah, if you're in the building, that could be a problem, but if you're outside somewhere, as I was in this case, that's quite good. Just a second, Margaret, I'll just finish what I'm saying. And also, if you set it up right and you've got an emergency contact, it will also send a text message to your emergency contact, giving you the details of where you're located and the fact that you've fallen down and that emergency services have been called. So I like this feature, and it's the reason I bought a new Apple Watch, basically, because I was concerned about the possibility of falling, and I was prescient because I actually needed it. Well, nearly needed it. As it happened, I stopped it before it rang emergency services because I was aware of what was going on enough by then. I didn't want to actually trouble them because I didn't think I was that badly hurt. So, Margaret, you had a question there?
Yes, in the case of a heart attack, if you stop moving, it might be too late. So
yeah.
If it detects something wrong, or you decide there's something wrong, can you press something to do an emergency call, or better still, speak to it and do an emergency?
Yeah, well, there's built-in emergency call features anyway. Like on the phone, you can hold down certain button combinations, and the same on the watch. There's actually, you can initiate an emergency call by holding the button on the watch for long enough, and it'll go to an emergency SOS feature.
Okay, a combination doesn't sound good if you're passing out. You just want one
button. Yeah, I'm not quite sure if there's anything you can do, but basically the heart rhythm warning one, it sort of occasionally checks your heart rate, and if it notices your heart rate is unusually high, it will alert you automatically. And sometimes it may be able to detect certain situations like atrial fibrillation, because it can detect that while it's actually measuring
what to do about it. Like it makes an automatic call if you fall over.
It's sort of like a preemptive warning. It's supposed to say, I think you might have this problem, you should go and see your doctor, effectively. So it's not supposed to be I'm going to save your life right now kind of thing. It's more of alerting you to a situation you may be unaware of, that you may need to go and get investigated. And there have been repeated reports I've been reading online about people who've had one of these and have used it for discovered something that they didn't know they had, and the doctor said, "Oh my God, you're lucky you came in, because if you hadn't, your heart was about to fail," sort of thing. So I don't know how often that happens, but there have been stories about it.
It's the equivalent of those things you hang around your neck and you just press a button and the ambulance comes. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, well, you can effectively do that sort of thing. So I don't want to fiddle with it right now, but I think it's hold down the side button for a few seconds.
A bit of experience into that one. If you've got St. John's thing, it will only work for a certain area, like 300 metres. So a watch is infinitely more safe than the St. John's.
Okay. Susan just made a point that she's had experience with St. John's beeper. It only works within a certain distance, 300 metres, that from your house. Yeah, but if you've got a watch and a cell phone with you, that's the catch, because the watch can only talk to your phone, and your phone's got to have cell phone coverage for this to be useful. So now, if you have a cellular model Apple Watch and you're paying for it with Spark, it can talk directly to the cellular network and doesn't need your phone with you. So that's the reason for having that. It costs more to buy them up front. It only works on Spark at the moment, since Vodafone and 2 Degrees haven't even said they're going to support them. And it costs you more per month for your cellular plan, because you're having to pay for the extra device. It's sort of $10 to $15 sort of ballpark, I think, per month, just to have that capability. But that means you don't have to carry your phone everywhere with you. You can answer phone calls and you can make emergency calls from your watch on its own. And that's possibly handy if you're also doing things like swimming, because the watch is much more waterproof than the phone, and you can make phone calls while you're sitting on an island out somewhere and you've got your phone with you or on a boat or whatever it might be. So, yep. So that gives you a general sort of overview. So effectively what we've got this year, last year, Series 5 added, which is the one I bought for my second watch, it added a always-on display, which basically means it dimly shows the time even while you aren't raising your wrist. Prior models, you had to actually look at the watch to see what time it was, which was a bit irritating. With the modern ones, you just glance down at it and you can still read what it says. So they made that display brighter in Series 6, which helps, but not really a biggie. They've also added, what was the second one? They added another heart. What was the other heart thing they added? I've now forgotten. Let me look at my notes. Blood oxygen, that's right. It adds a blood oxygen sensor. So it takes about 15 seconds to do a reading, and it's measuring the color of your blood as it pulses underneath the watch, basically using a new type of LED rather than the original series. So it requires a new hardware feature to gain that. And they're currently not classifying as a medical device, so it doesn't need regulatory approval, whereas the ECG did. And it's basically, the intention is it uses it to give you a guide to roughly what your blood oxygen levels are doing. So it might be helpful, for example, if you might be suffering from sleep apnea, for example, and you're wearing your watch overnight, it can alert you in the morning that your oxygen level got down to 50% or 70 or whatever it might be. Hopefully not 50, because that's probably fatal, but well below 90 something is where it should be. So that's possibly a useful feature. So apart from that, they added faster battery charging, which is quite handy, because with the new sleep tracking feature, which is a software feature they've added, you have to basically wear your watch overnight. And all Apple Watches have 18 hours battery life, which means that you need to recharge them every day. And normally, you take it off at night to recharge it, you put it on in the morning. But if you want to track your sleep, you've got to wear the watch overnight, so that takes out the recharging period. So what you do instead is you wear your watch overnight, and when you wake up, you take your watch off, put it on the charger, get ready for your day, and then put the watch back on again. And hopefully it's charged enough by then. So the new model charges faster, so that will be less of an issue. If you don't have enough charge left at the end of the day, it alerts you before you go to sleep to say, you should plug your watch in for a little bit to give me a bit more charge so I can operate overnight. So that's also a software feature. So basically, the newer your watch, the better it's going to do the sleep tracking, but it's not actually a model-specific thing. Well, normally I leave it charging overnight, so it's hard to tell, but in terms of, they say it's got 18 hours battery life. My original one, that wasn't far off. The Series 5, it's extremely rare for me to see it go below 50% after I've been wearing it all day. So it's actually better than that now, but it varies depending on what you're doing with it. If you're using it heavily, the more stuff you do with it, the more power it's going to be used. So yeah, so like if you're actively doing workouts and things like that is going to use a lot more power than just glancing at the time occasionally and that sort of thing. So, but it's actually, I find it quite usable. It doesn't cause me problems. And if you're really a keen Apple Watch user, you can solve the battery life problem by having 2 Apple Watches, which I'm sure Apple will be very happy about. Wear one overnight and then wear the other one during the day. Some people I've been hearing about online do that as a matter of habit, just so that they then have a more comfortable strap to wear overnight or something like that. They've got more money than sense, basically. Okay, so apart from the battery life, it's a bit faster, but it's every generation is a bit faster, so that's not really a biggie. And basically, the other interesting feature I mentioned is that they've added the U1 chip, which is a feature they added last year in the iPhone 11, which so far has only had one function, which is tell me which iPhone I'm pointing at when I want to do AirDrop, so I'll pick that one. It's a bit of a strange feature. What this chip actually does is it provides very accurate distance and direction location. The obvious reason for this feature is that Apple is going to introduce an improved version of their Find My service at some point, which will allow you to precisely locate devices that have this hardware in them. But you've got to have 2 of them. So you have to have a watch and a phone, which are both new enough, and they'll be able to precisely pinpoint the other one if you've got both of them. And over time, this will get added to more and more bits of hardware. And I expect that once Apple's got it far enough, they'll make the feature available. This might be happening as soon as the next media event. We don't know yet. But that's an interesting potential future feature anyway. Okay. Anybody have any questions on that Apple Watch model? If not, I'll just move on to the next one. So the second watch model they introduced is a new one called the Apple Watch SE. So effectively what they've done is they took last year's Apple Watch Series 5 with the same processor, took out some of the more expensive features and reduced the price. So it's $699 for the Series 6 and it's $479 for the SE. So the features you miss out on are ECG and the always-on display. Get the new features of the Series 6, like the blood oxygen sensor, but you do get all the other features like fall detection, sleep tracking, heart rhythm monitoring, all those sorts of things. So that is now quite a lot better second choice for an Apple Watch if you don't want to spend quite as much to get the latest model. So effectively you're buying last year's model with a fewer features. They are still selling the Series 3 for starting at $349, so that's even cheaper. That's the older design, slightly smaller body, so it's 38 or 42 millimeters. And it's also now 3 generations old and 3 processor generations old. And remember what I said about 4 years of software support? It might only get 1 more year, but hopefully because the Apple's still selling it, it'll at least get 2 more years of software support and maybe a bit beyond that. So at this stage, I don't recommend you buy one of those, but just because they're getting quite long in the tooth, unless you really want to try out an Apple Watch and really don't want to spend another, what, $130 to get the SE. The SE would be a better choice for most people, I think, at this point, if you want to experiment with an Apple Watch without having to commit too much to it. I've also mentioned in my article places to go if you want to find out more about options, particularly Apple's website. Also, Noel Leeming's, specifically in Tory Street, has a big display with lots of Apple Watch models on it. They're the only shop in the Wellington region that got set up with the full, well, something resembling what you get in an Apple store. It's sort of like half of an Apple store in terms of the watch display area, so you can go and look at several band combinations and things like that. I don't know how, I went in there again, having seen it for the original release, and then again a few months ago, it seems to have gone downhill a bit, but it's at least a better series of choices. You can see more options than you can in most other retailers. Okay, any questions on those models? If not, I'll move on. So I'll come back to the services. The other major new things were the iPads. So last year, Apple introduced the Series 7, or 7th generation, I get my terminology right, 7th generation entry-level iPad. So effectively what they did is they took the 6th generation model from 2 years ago and increased its size. So rather than being a 9.7-inch iPad, it was a 10.2-inch iPad. That's all they did to it. So it got bigger. This year, they've taken last year's iPad and put a faster processor into it. So now it's faster than it was last year, but it's still the same size and has all the other features the same. So in effect, what you get now is a 2-generation newer processor, which means 2 more years of software support after only a 1-year gap. So that means the current entry-level iPad is effectively a year better, relatively speaking, than last year's iPad. So it's also got a bit cheaper. In New Zealand, it's $30 cheaper. So starts at $569, if I remember right. I'll find that number again. I'll go to the next page, I think. Where's the, lost it, iPads, here it is. Yes, yeah, $569, that's the cheapest model. So that is, and now I would classify that as a reasonable iPad, whereas last year's one, I was thinking, why are they including such an old processor on this iPad? I can't really recommend that. This year, it's only a little bit old processor, so it's fine. So that's a reasonably good choice now if you just want an iPad for general use and don't want any fancy features. They've also updated the iPad Air, which is, for those who are here, this is last year's model, or early last year's model, the 3rd generation iPad Air. So that's a 10.5-inch one. The new one, they've done a major redesign. It's basically borrowed the design of the iPad Pro. On the front of Capital Apple, I've got a picture there showing the side view of it. So it's got flat edges rather than rounded edges. It's got a USB-C port. It removes the home button and moves the Touch ID sensor onto the power button. Doesn't have Face ID, but it's also got uniform edges rather than slightly offset ones. So it's a generally nicer design. So effectively, they've taken the basic design of the iPad Pro and taken away some of its more advanced features, and it works out to $500 cheaper than buying the entry-level iPad Pro just to get an iPad Air instead. So the price has gone up. It's $999 rather than $849. So it's $150 more than it was last year, but it's actually, again, a 2-generation processor jump, and it's got a whole bunch of other minor new features. They also changed the Apple Pencil support. Last year's model supported the original Apple Pencil. The new one has the same Apple Pencil Series 2 or 2nd generation, which docks on the side of the iPad, so it's a better design. It supports things like a double-click gesture, so you can tell software you want to do something special. So if you haven't got an Apple Pencil yet, then buying one of the new iPad Airs with the new Apple Pencil is future-proofing. If you have got an Apple Pencil, like I've got my original one, that only works with older models up to a certain point. And then obviously Apple's gradually shifting to the point where they'll phase it out completely. So the original Apple Pencil will only work on older models after that. The key difference is the original Apple Pencil has a lightning socket on the end, and it plugs, you charge it by plugging it into the lightning socket on the bottom of the iPad, which is utterly silly because it's poking out and it seems a bit dangerous, but I've just recharged that one, so I won't plug it in now. So, and it's also got a cap you can easily lose, so I haven't managed to lose mine yet, and I've had this for what, 5 years? So, I should actually remove it from its third-party case. So that's what they look like without the extra case on it, just plain white, and it's very round as well. The Series 2 has got a flat edge, so it doesn't roll, which is a better design. So if I had actually, when I get round to buying my next iPad, I'll also get a Series 2 Apple Pencil, and then this one can just be used on my older iPads until I get rid of them. So, yeah. Now that model is not actually available yet. It's due out in October. Interestingly, Apple announced it with the new generation of processor that they haven't used anywhere else yet, an A14 processor. And I think what's going on is they've said, here is the new iPad coming soon with a new processor. Here is a little bit of information about the new processor. We won't actually give it to you quite yet. Next month, they're going to announce new iPhones and the new processor. And hey, look at all this whiz-bang stuff this new processor can do. And here's the new iPad that we've already told you about. So I think what's going to happen is the iPad Air will actually be released after Apple announces the next generation of iPhones during October. So probably mid-October is the rumor at the moment. So that's likely timing.
They use the same.
Yes. iPad Airs generally use the iPhone processors. iPad Pros use more powerful ones. So effectively what you've got is the entry-level iPads is the basic model. The iPad Air's got more features and it's faster in the same generation. The iPad Pro's got more features and it's much faster because they use a more powerful processor and it's got better graphics and more speakers and better quality display, and the list goes on. There's quite a lot more stuff in an iPad Pro, but if you don't need, not actually using it as a sort of a primary computing device, then the iPad Air is basically the iPad Pro for those who can't justify the expense of an iPad Pro in effect. So, yeah. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, same as me. I got the original iPad Air and iPad 3. Yeah.
My Air is
yes, I've actually got, I ended up buying a second-hand iPad Air 2 as well. So I've got all 3 generations. I'm not going to, well, I wanted a device for testing. So I have here a iPad Air 2. There it is. So there is a noticeable difference. This is actually the thinnest iPad that Apple have even made. They got a bit thicker again with the later models. But
what they don't provide is leather cases.
Yeah, there's very little difference, so I can barely see the difference. I think they're so close you can't really tell. The iPad Air 1 was a bit thick, noticeably thicker though. They did actually get thinner with the iPad Air 2, and the 3 is more or less kept the same thinness.
David, why can't we select speaker view? We've got standard, side-by-side speaker, side-by-side gallery, and exit full screen. That's the only option I've got.
Because I'm in screen sharing mode, you'll only see my screen. If I stop sharing...
Oh, yes, I'm seeing all of us on your screen.
Yeah. If I stop sharing, you'll have full control again.
Yeah, that's better in case you want to show us something.
Okay, so only reason for me to share the screen is if I'm trying to show you a web page or something like that. So I'll just turn it off for now.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, so I think that's all I can really say on the iPads. The iPad mini was not updated, which means that it's effectively, the base iPad is now more or less caught up with the iPad mini. The mini's still got some advantages apart from the obvious size difference. It is actually slightly better in some areas. It's got a better quality display, for example. So there are still some technical reasons that an iPad mini is better than an entry-level iPad, but it's really just, it comes down to a size choice mainly now. So whereas previously the iPad mini was much better than the entry-level iPad and it was equivalent to an iPad Air, but this year the iPad Air's jumped up and the mini stayed where it was. So in effect. Okay, any further iPad questions? There. USB-C port, yes, so, yep.
That will go into my new 21-inch iPad, because that's got 2 C last year.
Mm-hmm.
But do I need any adapters for anything else?
Okay, so just to repeat the question for those who are working via Zoom, if you buy a new iPad which has a USB-C port, what will that work with in terms of adapters and that sort of thing? So far, the only iPads that have used that port have been the iPad Pros, the current generation and the previous one. So earlier iPad Pros, like I've got the first generation iPad Pro, that still used a Lightning port. So I don't yet have an iPad with a USB-C port. In effect, all of anything plugging in via Lightning is useless once you go to a USB-C iPad because there's no way to connect it. You can't get an adapter that converts from USB-C to Lightning that will work with an iPad. There's no socketed version of the Lightning version as an adapter.
No, I wasn't so much thinking that. What other things will go to USB-C?
Well, the idea is that you can effectively anything which is a USB-A or C peripheral that the iPad supports can be plugged in just using a simple USB-A to C adapter. So if the device is something that's got USB-C directly, it will just plug straight into the iPad. So for example, I've got a double-ended USB flash drive with C on one end and A on the other, and the C connection will go straight into the iPad without any adapters. To plug a USB-A device in, you would need just the standard USB-C to A adapter. Here's Apple's one. So that's Apple's standard one with the USB-A socket on that end and a USB-C plug on that end. So that would just plug into the iPad and then give the iPad a standard USB-A port. So if you're plugging into a computer, you would need a USB for a new enough Mac that's already got USB-C ports on it, or Thunderbolt 3, which are the equivalent, then you just need a USB-C to C cable to connect the two of them together to transfer data or whatever you need to do, or to charge it. So the USB, that's the older, yeah, that Peter's just waving the Apple's three-headed monster, which is that's got a USB-C socket, a USB-A socket, and an HDMI socket on it. So you can use that for connecting an external display, or and a USB-A peripheral and plugging in power at the same time. That will also work on the new iPads. So, and you can also use third-party adapters that have multiple ports on them as well. So there's quite a much wider range of options, basically. But it does mean if you have an investment in Lightning cables or adapters for things like SD card readers or that sort of thing, you'll have to basically buy another batch of adapters again, which is an extra cost. So obviously the way that Apple is heading is that the USB-C is gradually working its way into the entire product line, and eventually there's some debate on the online community about what's happening with the iPhone, because the iPhone is sticking with Lightning. There's actually some speculation Apple may not go to USB-C on the iPhone, but rather get rid of the connector completely and just rely on wireless charging as eventually, when they get to the point they think that's... That's a possibility. They may have a smart connector. There's a possible option as well. The iPad Air and Pro have got a 3-pin connector on the side. If you can see that on the side there, the little three dots. That is where the smart keyboard plugs in. So the keyboard is actually getting power from the iPad and transferring data to the iPad. It's possible Apple could include that sort of basically surface magnetic clasping contact on a future iPhone and use that as a mechanism for providing you with a physical connection for when you need it. So we don't know yet until it actually happens, of course, but that's sort of one of the sort of speculations that where the future might go. Because USB-C is a bit thicker than Lightning, so if you switch an iPhone to USB-C, the phone may have to get thicker, and Apple doesn't like thicker devices. So yeah. So we don't know yet, but that seems to be the direction things are going. I have to get this around the right way again now. Let's try that.
So it'd be a bit of fun backing up.
Now I've confused myself. Which way around does this thing go? Put it that way, that's right, because that's the closing side, yes. There we go, now it's snapped together correctly, so that's good. Yeah, so anyway, that's sort of where things are going. Another interesting point I should mention is that the new Apple Watches, and just remember I didn't mention in my article, Apple has got rid of the power adapter included with them. They include the cable, because you need a special cable which has got the magnetic charging puck on the end, which has got a USB plug on the end of it. But they've taken the little power adapter, one of these, this part basically, that does not get included anymore if you buy a new Apple Watch. The theory is you've already got one, or you've probably got multiple ones, so why are they adding more to e-waste by creating yet more? I think I have about 10 of these sitting unopened in various boxes of all the various products I've bought at home, because I'm only using the same ones again and again and again. And if my old devices die, I don't throw them out, I just hang on to them in case I want to use them again, or sort of semi-die. So that may also happen with new iPhones. They'll probably take out the power adapters, but the iPads, some of them, I think they're still including with iPads, particularly the new iPad Air, because it's got USB-C. So it now comes with a C-to-C cable and power adapter. So you need to switch to a new power adapter for that one. You can't use an older power adapter as easily. What's that? What do you got there, Shan? Your audio is muted. I can't see what that is. It's something like, that's your charging pad. Yes.
Yeah. So basically that's a 3-in-1. So that basically will do watch, iPhone, and watches and AirPods Pro.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to see because of your virtual background. It's actually disappearing into the background. So that's actually a wireless charging pad, and it's got that's the Apple Watch puck, the white bit on the end. So that's what the watch charges via. And there's also wireless charging pads built into the base of it, so you can plug in, you can put AirPods.
Yeah, that's a dimple there for the AirPods.
Yep. Yeah. There's an increasing number of this sort of product from a variety of different manufacturers. They're quite readily available. So yeah, that sort of seems to be where things are going anyway. Okay. Any further questions on iPads? I'll just hop down to that. I should mention, if you're thinking about buying an iPad Pro, you should probably hold off till next month, because Apple did a very minor update to the iPad Pro earlier this year. I'm suspecting they're going to release a new one, perhaps at the media event where they announce the Macs, whichever one that ends up being. So because the iPad Air is more or less caught up with the iPad Pro, they've now got to jump the iPad Pro up a bit further to distinguish them again. So if you don't rush out and buy one. Interestingly, ever since Apple released the previous iPad Pro, there has been a 1 month or more lag between when you could order one and when they would ship it. And that 1 month lag now pushes it to late October, which is very conveniently after the rumoured announcement date for the next round of products. So what we may actually be seeing now is that Apple is deliberately delaying it until they announce the next one, so you'll get the new model instead of the old model, but we don't know that for sure yet. They have done that sort of thing before. The Mini is almost certainly not going to get an update anytime soon. The pattern has been, the Mini took about 4 years to get an update between the Mini 4 and the Mini 5. And I think that this might be the last model of the Mini, unless Apple decides to do one more revision in a couple of years' time. Effectively, what they're doing is they're keeping some of the older processors around for devices that don't really need the extra performance. And once the Mini gets to the bottom end of that curve, they might bump it up again to something resembling the current model. So there may be an update for that in a couple of years' time, but I wouldn't be surprised to see nothing next year for it either. I've got a 4 secondhand again, so bother buying a new one for that. Okay, I think I've run out of things to talk about on new products. Shall we talk quickly about new operating systems? Now this is going to get interesting because I have to somehow show you my phone screen and show the Zoom people my phone screen. I haven't quite worked out how to do this yet, so let's see what happens. Wake it up. Yeah, people behind me. Oh, you can, excellent, it works. Okay, so you should be able to see my iPhone screen at the moment. So one of the things they've done is they've added this new Translate app. I didn't mention it in my article, but if I go into the Translate app, it has basically, it's similar to Google Translate, but it's got some nice features, like if you put it into landscape mode, it will actually, I can just speak to this. No, I can't do it. Okay, it won't let me do it. Of course, it's saying translation is not available at the moment. It's just the demo gods are fighting me. But I've tried this briefly before, and I can basically either type in or speak a phrase in English, and it will put up the translation alongside it. So the theory is, if you don't speak a particular language and you're going to visit another country, in the theory that you could actually visit another country, of course, this is a technical problem at the moment, you can actually you can hand your phone to the other person so they can see what you said in their language, and then they can speak, and then it will translate back again. So it seemed like quite a nice feature. Yeah, I've tried it briefly just to test some phrases that I already knew, just to see how well it did. Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, it's built into iOS 14 on iPhones. So if you have an iPhone, you upgrade to iOS 14, you get the app. And annoyingly, it gets inserted on the second page and pushes all of your other icons to the right by one. So all my nice alignment I had of all my icons got messed up. I didn't work out where everything had gone. I worked that out in the end. Now, the other thing I've mentioned already in my article is the new style of widgets. At the top of that screen, you'll see it's got a full width widget, and there's a couple of smaller ones below that. So this is the today view I've gone to, which was a feature which was already there. So you just swipe from the left edge of the screen and that shows you the widgets, and I can then scroll down through it. So it's automatically set up a whole bunch of existing widgets like the battery level and a few other things. stocks. The new style widgets come in multiple sizes. You can see there the headlines one is effectively one of the big ones, which occupies most of the screen. And the small ones are half the width of the screen, and then there's a full width one. The one at the top here is actually special. It's a thing called the Smart Stack. I can actually scroll down on that and toggle it between, rotate it between several things that you can then configure which bits get put in there. So it's a space saving measure. And I can scroll up or down with that. And it's also got a smart rotate feature, which will automatically try to work out what it is that you want to see, and it will put it there and anticipate what you want to do with it. I have not yet tested this feature or worked out how it's going to learn, but having seen similar features on the iPhone over the years, it gets very spooky about how good it works out your patterns. So for example, if you're in the habit of looking at the weather in the morning, for example, it will probably show you the weather when you open your phone after you wake up, that sort of thing. It's very clever. So that's one aspect of the new widgets. The other aspect of the new widgets is you can now put them on your home screen. So I don't want to muck up my, oh, there's one. Here's one I prepared earlier. I was fiddling around with this. So I've actually added that widget, a large version of the music one, to my home screen, and it mixes in with the apps. So that occupies most of the screen. I think I was experimenting with some smaller ones further down my list. No, didn't quite get there. Yeah, so if I want to actually add one, what I'll do is I'll modify my home screen by basically I tap and hold on something until it gives me the jiggle mode. And then in the top left-hand corner, there's a plus. I tap on plus and I can now choose one of the widgets to add. So these are currently on this phone. I've only got the standard ones that come with it. I haven't added any third-party ones unless some app has happened to have been updated and included some. I guess a few of them have already got updates. So yeah, there are some there already. But effectively what I can do is I can just tap on one of these widgets. So say, for example, I want to know about, what's a good one? Oh, their fitness. Let's say I want to pay attention to my fitness on one of these screens. I tap that one and it pops out. I can choose between the small, medium. This one doesn't have a large one, but some of them do. I'll go for the small one and go add widget. And it inserts it into my home screen in any position that I want to put it in. I can then drag it round. It won't go in the middle, it'll only go on the left or right for these small ones, but you can put it on basically any row you like. I think it looks like it won't actually, it'll only go on the top two. Yeah, it's actually a little bit limited where it can place it. It looks like there's only 3 vertical positions as well. So once you've got it there, once I tap done, you can see that just basically sits there amongst all my app icons. And if I tap that, it actually opens the activity app. So these widgets, all they can do is show you occasionally updated information. You tap them and they go to a particular app.
Can you shrink it to the size of the others?
What was that, sorry, Margaret?
Can you shrink it to the size of the other icons?
The app icons and the widgets are deliberately sized differently, so you always know what you're dealing with.
Oh,
I think Apple doesn't want to have widgets that are as small as app icons. So if I go into edit mode again, and go select that one, remove the fitness widget, and then add another one, just so you can see what they look like. Oops, try that again, the other way. I'll go and put the stocks one in this time. That's actually got a big one, a medium one, and a small one, so I'll put the medium one in this time. Add widget, so that you can see that one's the full width, and I can again adjust that into, won't let me drag it? Why won't it let me drag it? It appears that they can only go at the top. There we go. No, it just wouldn't let me drag for some reason. I can put it in the middle as well. So I can leave that there and just have recent, it's actually got currency conversions, not stocks. But I think if I tap and hold on it, I can go, no, that doesn't have editing features either. Some of the widgets, you can actually adjust what they show by tapping and holding on them and choosing an option. But the idea is you basically have more customization of what you put on your home screens. You can move your apps around, you can add these widgets to them, and you can have more pages and whatever you need to do. The other major new feature they've added is this thing called the app library. When you get down to you can see at the bottom, I've got lots of pages of apps on my phone. When you get down to the last page and you go one more to the right, you get the new app library. And what this one is basically a extended version of the Siri suggestions feature. It gives you curated lists of frequently used apps organized into categories. So you can see there it's got suggestions and recently added to the top, and then it's got predefined categories of utilities, productivity and finance, creativity, etc. And it auto sizes the icons within that according to the ones you've used most frequently. So that it's most likely that apps you use often will be visible on that screen, and it gives you a way to easily get to them quickly. And you'll notice there's also a search field at the top, so you can search for an app, and if you pull down on it, you get an alphabetic list of all your apps. So you can use that as a quick way. If you know what your apps, you can't quite remember the name of the app, but you can remember what it starts with, you can hop down to it, you can find it by name, whatever it might be. So that gives you an easy way to list all of your apps. The other feature is that you can now have the option of removing apps from your home screen and leaving them in the app library. So if I choose, for example, an old version of FileMaker or something like that, well, I don't use that photo finish one on this phone. So if I tap and hold on this, you have a choice of remove app. And if I tap that, it asks, do you want to move to the app library or delete it? So I'll go move to app library. That icon no longer appears anywhere on my home screen, but I can still search for it by name. Oops, type it wrong. So yeah, as long as you remember the name. Or I can go and hunt for it in my app library. So if I actually open it, so it knows that's, I think, the warehouse stationery photo management thing for doing printed photos or something like that. So it's one I've used once, I think. Once I've run it again, at least. So if I go, here's another shortcut. If you tap and hold on the dots at the bottom, you get a pop-up thing and you can quickly whip through the screens. That's a new feature, which is quite handy if you've got lots of screens. And then you go one to the right to get to the app library. So there's always at the right-hand end. So photo finish, you'll see there is in the creativity section. It's already recognised that's one I've used recently. So I can easily tap and hold on that and go add to home screen. You notice it was just hiding there. Do that again.
Does that mean that they'll remove those bubbles that keep popping up and moving your apps around arbitrarily?
No, because that's the relocation of things rather than the... If you're trying to drag icons around, that's still as horrible as ever. But the idea is that you can actually simplify your home screen by getting rid of infrequently used apps, leaving them in the app library, and only worrying about the ones you care about, or just leave all your, like I haven't actually organized all my pages of apps. I've organized the first page, I know where everything is there, the second page, I know where most of those things are, and a couple of things on my third page. Beyond that, it's a random wasteland. I don't know where anything is. I just search for things by name previously. Now I can use the app library or other features to find them. There's another related feature as well. If there's a page of apps you don't actually ever use directly, you can tap on the thing at the bottom. I think I can now do this now. You go into jiggle mode. You tap on the thing at the bottom and it gives you a new thing called edit pages. And from here, I can say, get rid of that page, 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 get rid of that page. Done. I now only have a fewer number of app pages. The apps are still there. They're available via our app library, but the entire screen that they're on is hidden. So, and I can get it back again by going through the same exercise. Tap on there and turn them back on again.
And then, you know how you've always been told to remove apps that back in the battery?
Oh, you're talking about the double, hang on. I don't care about that. I want to, if you go up to the task switcher, if you have an app which is causing problems, you can come to this thing and swipe up to kill the app. It's basically a forced quit. The only reason to do that is if you're sure that you want to kill that particular app. Occasionally I do that because an app is misbehaving, I need to kill it and run it again. I never do it as a matter of habit because this has a list of every app I've ever launched on this phone going right back pages and pages and pages. They are not occupying memory, they're just a static image of what the app looked like last time I ran it. So there's no reason to deliberately quit things in there. On older models, you double click the home button, which if they've got a home button. On the models with Face ID, you swipe up from the bottom and hold, and it pops up the list. So
you're saying it doesn't drain the battery?
No, some apps do, but identifying which ones do is a little bit of an exercise in having to analyze what's going on. But arbitrarily killing apps just because you think something's draining the battery and if you need to use the app again, it's going to make things worse because it has to relaunch the app next time you open it, which takes more battery power than it did to leave it running. So it's actually counterproductive to randomly kill apps. It's better to work out which one's actually causing the problem and fix it. And quite often the problem isn't an app, it's something going on in the background like for example, personal hotspot or something like that, or difficult to access the cellular network, so the signals had to be pumped right up to get more power out of it, or something like that. There are many possible explanations. So, yep. Historical record, effectively. No, if you use the same app again, it will pop up to the front of the list. So it's showing you the order of the apps in which you last used them. So the further you go to the left, the longer it is historically that you last used that app. It doesn't tell you when you last used it, just how long ago relative to the other apps. No, it doesn't. Most apps are not able to run in the background, so they just stop working shortly after you close them. Some of them do have limited capabilities to run in the background, so you can do things like dynamically update content so it's ready for you when you open them, or finish a download, or a few things like that. But most of them are not allowed to do that. So they, not that bad. Okay.
On the iPhone, can you see which app?
Now, at this point, I'm going to quickly. Yes, I was going to mention, if you go into settings under battery, there is a section in there which measures battery level and activity, and also blames things depending on what's been using all the power. So it shows you over the last, where's the setting for it? Yeah, the last 24 hours at the moment, this is showing what's used most of the battery in my phone. Nearly all of it was personal hotspot, because I was using my phone via Wi-Fi earlier to provide personal hotspot. So the next biggest at the moment on this phone is settings. Normally this, for my primary phone, Safari is the one thing that's using the most power, because I'm using lots of web browsing. So if there's something using an unusual amount of power, it will stand out reasonably quickly on that. So that's 24 hours, and it's also got the last 10 days. So it shows you over the last week. This phone I'm not using all that often anymore, so it's not actually all that accurate. If I looked at it on my current iPhone, then that would be a better indication. But it gives you a rough idea of, over the last week, why has Facebook used 80% of my battery when I haven't been using Facebook? That's the sort of situation where you probably have a problem with the app, and it's worth trying to kill it if it's doing something stupid like that. Yeah.
Just looked at mine, the exposure notifications over the last 10 days is half per user. And that's like new.
Yeah, so Robin's was saying exposure notifications on his phone is using half his power over the last week. Let me find that on my other phone. Bear with. Exposure notifications. Have I got it turned on this phone? Let's have a look. Cancel that, go into settings. What I'm going to use is the search feature in settings, so I'm not sure where it's hiding, but I know that it's there somewhere. Exposure, there it is, exposure notifications. So I just use the search feature in settings by dragging down and then typed in the name of the feature I wanted. So all right, okay. First point is that have you actually turned on the exposure notifications feature? Because notice mine says turn on exposure notifications. Which means, turn off. All right, if you've turned it on, you are wasting battery power for no reason at all, because New Zealand does not yet support that feature. So turn it off, because that's just wasting battery power. Basically what it's doing is it's hunting for any way of finding out how to do this, and it can't find it. What it does, it's a new feature they added in iOS 13.7, and it's there in 14 as well, which in countries that have this service, it means that the phone is able to automatically, in the background, keep track of other devices nearby via Bluetooth, and it basically maintains a log of everything which is near enough to you that there's a potential risk, especially if they're near enough to you for a significant period of time, for potential COVID-19 exposure. So the goal behind this is that it can automatically gather information, and if you get told that you've been exposed to COVID-19, then your device can then upload its list, and then that gets distributed to everybody else who is near you, and vice versa. So if you're near somebody else who's been tested positive, that's the theory. However, that relies on the country actually having implemented the service, and New Zealand has not done that yet. So. No. So if you turn that on, your phone is chewing through battery power to find any nearby Bluetooth devices. So yes, you'll notice there is a section at the bottom which says availability alerts, which is on. My phone is showing the default settings right now. So basically what this means is I do not have it enabled but I have availability alerts turned on. And if New Zealand enables this feature, my phone will tell me that New Zealand now has this feature available, so I should probably turn the feature on. So it's basically, I don't want to preemptively turn it on because it's just wasting power. There's no point. But of course, that means when the feature is available, if I turn it on, it's going to waste power because it's talking via Bluetooth to everything in nearby range to work out what's going on. So I don't know if I like this feature, but yes, as long as that's turned on, you will be told when the country you're in actually has the feature available.
It says here available alerts are not available because location services are.
You have to turn location services on, otherwise it doesn't know which country you're in. Yes. Yes. Yes, 13.7 is when it was added, so it's available in 13.7. You'd go into settings, wherever it's hiding in there. I think it's under settings general, if I find it the normal way this time. No, it's not there. Settings. Oh, there it is. It's actually a whole section by itself. It's in the main settings list. It's called exposure notifications. Yeah. Exposure notifications. So you can see there, it's near the bottom of the section, which has got the emergency SOS, battery, etc. Yep. So that's
looks like
what I have shown at the moment is how it should be set.
Mm.
Availability, it should be on, so you at least get told when New Zealand has the feature. Yep. If you turn that off, you won't even be told about it. That's the only difference. But that's just a notification that doesn't use a lot of power, whereas the actual feature does use a lot of power because it's constantly talking Bluetooth.
Where is the
okay.
No, not that.
Andrew, did you have something to say then? Oh, just going. It's gone.
No. The one.
Okay. Now there are an awful lot of other minor new features. One that, for example, that I've noticed, if I remember where it was. Yes, that's right. It's under
Location service.
privacy. That's right. I remember where I found this new feature under privacy. Location services, you can control which apps are able to track your location. I can just share my screen again so we can see it. Where's my iPhone gone?
Trouble is they don't show you which ones are on and off, so you've got to go through the whole damn lot every time.
Location services are on.
Yeah, location services are turned on, but it might have location not available for that feature or something like that. So each of the apps in system, so this is under settings, privacy, if I go back to the top again. So settings, privacy, location services. So you can see for each app you've got installed what its permission is while using or something like that. Now, if for some reason I want to control this feature because I don't want a particular application to know where I am, I can go into there and you'll notice it's now got a new setting at the bottom called precise location. That's a feature they've added in iOS 14, which if you turn that off, it gives them a rough idea of, say, which suburb you're in, but not the exact address of your house. So this is a new feature in iOS 14, so you'd only see it if you've installed the update. So that's, if you're still running iOS 13, that field isn't there yet, because you need to upgrade first. But Chris, one of my partner's son, somehow this feature had been turned on automatically, so for Find My, which meant that when we were trying to work out where he was somewhere in the suburb of Newlands, even when he was on a bus over in Crofton Downs, or Shedden sorry, I keep getting the names muddled up. So it's quite a wide circle. We didn't know where he was within that circle, but he was somewhere. Yes, the location services needs to be on if you want anything to be able to locate you. And then as each app uses the feature, it'll ask you on a case-by-case basis, do you want to allow this app to use it only while you're using the app or not? And you can adjust the settings later on within privacy. So there are dozens of other features, and I certainly haven't got time to go through all of them, but the sort of thing we can probably touch on additional ones as we have time over in future meetings. And I recommend having a look through the list on Apple's website because there's just so much stuff on there. Now, I just want to mention briefly the stuff I was talking about with widgets and with the app library only applies to the iPhone, not the iPad. Apple did not implement the app library and all the home screen reorganization stuff's on the iPad. For some reason, they chose to make it iPhone only. The new widgets are available on the iPad, but only in the Today view. So you can still see the new style of widgets there, but they're limited to that one slide over or stuck on the left panel. So that's their major change there. Okay. I've finished talking about the major features I wanted to talk about. Are there any minor features that people are aware of they would like to discuss or have questions about?
Just one question. The new Apple SE phone has space for 2 SIMs?
Peter is just asking whether the new iPhone SE is one that's got the dual SIM capability. It won't have space for 2 SIMs. Oh. I'm going to look up my database of models and just double check it. I'm pretty sure it's got SIM slot. It's got nano SIM and eSIM. So I think, assuming that's the model we've got in New Zealand, I'd have to double check that, but I believe so. So the eSIM is basically an embedded electronic SIM that's in the device, which needs to be programmed by the carrier to match their network. And then you've also got a slot, so you can add another SIM to it, a normal one. So the idea is that phones with that feature, currently Spark is the only network that supports the eSIM. So if one of your networks is Spark, you can have your Spark account on the eSIM, and then you've got the nano SIM free to insert either another New Zealand network carrier's SIM or an overseas one. So when you go to another country, if your iPhone is new enough to have this feature, you can have your home number and your overseas number available simultaneously, and people can ring you wherever you are in the world with either number, and it works. And you can also configure it for choosing which SIM to use when you ring particular numbers in your contact list. So if you want to ring somebody at home using your home number rather than your international number, you can do that as well. So that's, once we're allowed to travel overseas, that feature is quite a useful one. Vodafone basically said at some point they would be adding eSIM support, and it was supposed to happen by about now, but they've put it off again. So we don't know when that's going to happen. That's also a required feature for cellular Apple Watches, but that's one step beyond eSIMs. They've got to have eSIM first, then they've got to add cellular Apple Watch support on top of that. So the eSIM feature currently requires you to use Spark. The other option you've got is you could put your New Zealand SIM in the slot, and while you're overseas, you can temporarily program the eSIM with whichever country you're in. So you can do it the opposite way around. But it's most convenient if the built-in one is your normal network here. But you can, of course, also use it for single phone has 2 phone numbers on the same network or different networks. So you can have Spark and Vodafone, or 2 Spark numbers, work and personal, on the same phone. And they're actually distinguishable, and you can have incoming calls with different settings, so you can have different ringtones if it's a work number or a personal number. That sort of combination is possible as well. So that's supported, I think, it goes back at least as far as the iPhone XS, I think, and maybe the 10R. I can actually quickly look that up. So if I look here.
Which number you're being...
Yep. Going backwards to the iPhone 10 doesn't have it. The iPhone XS does, so that's when they introduced it. So 10S, 10R, 11, 11 Pro, and SE have all got this feature. Yeah. Yep, hang on a sec. Go back here again. Somebody's got his hand up. Shane, yes?
Yeah, just to let you know, I currently have 2 SIM numbers. So I have an eSIM on Spark, and my current one, my standard number is 2 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So it works quite well.
Yeah, no problems at all. So basically, my primary number, which is my 2 degrees number, if I send texts or make phone calls on that phone number, all my replies come back on that. But if I designate it to the secondary number, which is my Spark number, all my calls and answers come back that, but they still come back in my text stack. But if you highlight over the person's phone number, you can actually assign it whether it's primary or secondary number. So basically that's how they assign them. So your primary number is your SIM number, your secondary number is your eSIM.
So yeah, my current solution to the dual SIM My primary phone is on Vodafone. I have a backup older iPhone model, which happens to be on Spark, because I wanted to have a second option while we were in lockdown in case Vodafone's network went out, so we had an alternative point of contact, and I've just kept it going since then. And my work phone, which happens to be an Android phone, which I want to keep anyway because it's a different operating system, so it's useful to have a second option. Yeah, and that's not counting all the older iPhones I got littering my office, which are out of date now.
The second SIM is a data only SIM, so you can hotspot.
I don't even know if you're allowed to do that. Peter was just asking if you can have the second SIM as a data only one. I think the cell phone carriers insist on data only plans are only usable in devices that don't have voice and text capability. So you can only use them in iPads and mobile broadband devices and those sorts of things. Yeah, but basically you just don't give people the phone number, because I'd never given anybody the Spark phone number that I've got, which I previously used on an iPad. So it was data only and didn't have text message capability, for example. So now it's actually in an iPhone and I can get text messages on that if I need to. Yeah, so if anybody rings me on that, I know it's a scammer or a marketer.
New Zealand has an exposure.
Sorry? No, it's got no. It's
just said so.
Your region. What does it say?
The region has an exposure.
Yeah, it's got an app, but it doesn't actually use the exposure notification API. It's different thing.
What else does it say?
So that's the app that we've actually got.
Yes, the COVID-19 Tracer app is an entirely manual thing that uses the scanning of QR codes, and it all just keeps the data on your phone. It doesn't use Bluetooth. They have been mutterings about possibly adding Bluetooth support in a later version of it. They were also talking about, what are they called? COVID cards or something like that, which are basically lanyards with a card on the end, which has got a Bluetooth device, and they can talk to each other, and they're probably more reliable than the smartphone method. It also means that more people are going to have access to them because you don't have to have a smartphone. So, yeah.
I've just been wandering around using Ripple and the government one. The government one, the Ripple one worked 9 times out of 10. The government one was not good. Okay, I've used
the Ripple app once, and I've used the government one every single time since then, because it didn't exist. Apart from occasionally not scanning properly and occasionally needing to log in again, I haven't had any trouble with it. So
just klutzy compared to Ripple. Ripple is sort of, I've gone with the rhythm of Ripple, but the government one.
The Ripple app, for those who don't know about it, RIPPL, if I remember right, they came out first, and they had their own QR codes, but they added support for the government ones as well. So you can use the Ripple app for both the Ripple codes and the government codes. And it's got a better system for managing your log of places you visited and that sort of thing. But I don't care, I'm just using the government one.
I think it's now been removed, David.
The Ripple app?
So that there's not confusion.
I'll check that, because I wasn't aware of that.
Well, I was told it was going to be removed anyway.
No. Yeah, Ripple Privacy First, it's there. RIPPL, it's on the App Store still. Oh, hang on. It's on the App Store and it says to open it. I'm just wondering if that's because I've already got it installed. Let me just check on my older phone.
Any place that's displaying it, because they said they'd asked them to take it down. I was querying it at Zealandia because a whole lot of people come from elsewhere, and it's the City Council.
That's a different question. They're probably saying take down the Ripple posters. They haven't got rid of the app, because the app works with the official government posters as well. So you can still use the Ripple app, but they're no longer bothering to publish Ripple QR codes for businesses to display, because there's no reason to. You can just use the standard government poster. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Any other requests? I've got a
Lightning, what is the, do we know what the new connector is for the next Macs? I'm just looking through your article here.
Sorry, the next Macs?
Well, we've got
we don't know anything about
getting into the iPad. What's the story about whether it'll get into Mac as well?
Well, the new Macs, we already know what direction they'll be going, because the Macs have already got Thunderbolt 3 in it as their primary port.
Not going to USB-C?
Well, that is USB-C. Thunderbolt 3 is USB-C with extra features.
You still need an adapter. It's not the same as other USB-Cs.
Yes, it is. Thunderbolt 3 has every feature of USB-C as a standard feature. You can plug a standard USB-C peripheral into a Thunderbolt 3 port. You don't need an adapter.
So I can use my Samsung cord, for example, this thing. So,
if that's a USB-C plug, then yes, that will work fine.
I can put that into a Thunderbolt and it'll work?
Yep, Thunderbolt 3, Apple keeps calling it Thunderbolt 3 brackets USB-C. They're actually, Thunderbolt 3 is basically a USB-C port with, it must comply with all of the USB-C standards. So it's got USB 2, USB 3, revision 1 and, I can't remember the names of the silly things now. They keep changing the names. So basically the 5 gigabit per second and the 10 gigabit per second one, and it supports display output, and it supports Thunderbolt output. And it's got to support all of them for it to be a Thunderbolt port. So
you've just got a widget.
Yeah, so basically a Thunderbolt 3 port is a USB-C port with practically every feature that's supported by USB-C, whereas if you have a device which just says it's USB-C, you don't know which features it's got. Thunderbolt 3 means, yes, it's got pretty much every feature. USB-C alone only tells you the physical connector and the bare minimum that it supports USB 2. Doesn't guarantee anything else. So they can be quite confusing, but effectively regard Thunderbolt 3 as an excellent superset of USB-C. And what we probably are going to see with the next Macs, the Apple Silicon ones, is they'll move to Thunderbolt 4. And Thunderbolt 4 has the same connector again and is fully compatible with Thunderbolt 3 and USB-C and adds more standard features, basically, and guarantees higher speeds. So, so basically, USB-C, if you imagine it on a scale, USB-C means this feature and random other features. Thunderbolt 3 means all of these features. Thunderbolt 4 means all of these features plus this feature, effectively. So that's the way to think of it. USB-C is the physical connector and a basic standard, but you can't guarantee what features it's got. And unfortunately, if you buy a USB-C cable, there are so many different variations of it that you don't actually know what it does unless you read the writing on the packaging to tell you. So again, a Thunderbolt 3 cable is actually the best USB-C cable because it supports all the features.
Is that what they give you with your iPad?
No, they give you a basic USB-C charge cable, they call it. So it does power and it does USB 2 data. It doesn't do USB 3 or Thunderbolt data.
So it do backups and
yes. Yes, but not at high speeds. But you don't need to because the port doesn't support the high speeds. But like if I dig out my Thunderbolt 3 cable, very exciting. If I've got it, good question. I may not have it. No, I don't actually know if I got it with me because I rearranged my bag since February. But basically, it looks like a USB-C cable, but it says on the box it's a Thunderbolt one, so I keep it in the box to remind me which one it is. And it's guaranteed to do power delivery, it's guaranteed to do USB 2, USB 3, and Thunderbolt data, all display, all through the same cable. Whereas if you buy a cheaper USB-C cable, it may only be for charging slow data or relatively slow data. And if you buy one that's specified as being a USB 3.1 Gen 2 cable, then it was guaranteed to do 10 megabits per second, gigabits per second data transfer and all the lower level features of USB-C. But there's sort of different subsets that it may or may not support.
So you can buy a portable hard drive.
Yep.
You buy one with a Thunderbolt connection.
You can, but they're a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
What you typically do, and this one I have got, I've got a Samsung T5. I've actually bought a T7 now, which is a newer model, which is a USB-C external SSD. So there's an example. So that is, if I unplug it, so we've got there, that's the actual gadget. And if I hold it up next to an iPhone, you get a rough idea of the size of the thing. So they're quite small and they're quite slim as well. So the those costs starting in the sort of the 150-ish range for a relatively small capacity, and then they go up to 2 terabytes, they get quite expensive at the high end. It's got a USB-C plug on it. It supports, this particular one supports USB 3.1 Gen 1, 5 gigabits per second data transfer. When you buy them, they come with 2 cables. I don't think I've got the cables with me, but this particular cable, I've got USB-C on one end and USB-A on the other end. So that is supplied with a cable that I can use to plug that into an older computer with a USB-A port, and it's supplied with another cable which will plug it into a newer computer with a USB-C port. And that works with a Thunderbolt 3 connector, and it will work with a future Thunderbolt 4 connector. So as long as the computer is capable of supporting the speed of the drive, it'll work fine. The newer model of these drives is now called a T7, and that one is faster in that it uses the twice as fast again USB-C standard. So that one is USB 3.1 Gen 2 at 10 gigabits per second. If you have a computer capable of doing that and you plug it in via USB-C, you get the full speed. If you plug it in via USB-A, it slows down to the same speed as this one. So the advantage there is if you have a new enough Mac, you can use the USB-C connection to get full speed out of the newer drives. But that's sort of I'm gradually moving to these sorts of things as for my external storage, as long as I can afford them. Usually what I'm doing is I'm waiting till PB Technology has one of their weekly sales in which they sell it for a reasonable discount, and I'll go and buy another one. It's a matter of just waiting until I get a bit cheaper, because since I bought my first one, they've come down quite a bit in price as well, just for the same capacity. So I've generally gone with 500 gig. I'm now buying 1 terabyte ones. I can't justify a 2 terabyte one yet. So,
yes. Suffer from the low SSD problem having to keep the power up all the time, or eventually.
You mean the risk of losing data on it? Yeah, okay, that is a point. If you have an external SSD which you only use, say, once a year or something like that, there is a risk that the data on the drive might decay and disappear.
It's not
it's not as good as an archive device. It's fine as a general frequently used backup device because you're plugging it in often and using it again. But you shouldn't regard any solid-state drive as a reliable long-term storage medium, which includes USB flash drives and things like that. They are basically only relying on the capacitive charge holding of the cells, which will decay. So hard drives will last for probably decades, not lose their contents as long as nothing externally damages them or there's no magnetic fields. But solid-state storage doesn't have that characteristic. It's electrically holding a charge inside the cell, so it will decay over time. So you may lose the contents of it within months to a year or more if you don't use it regularly. Yeah. And it basically has to be powered on the computer for long enough that it can refresh itself for it to recharge. Same goes for the internal solid-state drives and computers. If you have an infrequently used Mac and you don't plug it in and turn it on for several months, it might lose the contents of its internal drive. So I have lots of old Macs. No, but I don't know what this timescale is. That's the problem. It might be longer than that, but it's something to be aware of at least. Solid state is not 100% reliable.
They don't have a small battery.
No, well, they'd have to actually power on and touch each of the cells in the solid state drive regularly to maintain its contents. And it usually actually does this by copying data to unused spaces periodically in the background. So gradually, yeah. Yep. So in fact, I have some of my external hard drives do that as well. When you eject them, they wake up again and start doing things all by themselves. And what's going on is the computer doesn't know about it. What are you doing? Unplug it and it stops doing it. So I don't know what it's doing, but it's probably just doing data protection or shuffling or who knows.
The C slots in the back of the iMacs.
Yes.
What level are those?
Thunderbolt 3. Yeah. So the simple way of remembering this at the moment is that every Mac, with the exception of the 12-inch MacBook, if it's got a USB-C port, it's a Thunderbolt 3 port. So in the future, that's going to get more complicated because the next generation may be Thunderbolt 4, which is a superset.
But at least it'll be Thunderbolt.
Yeah, it'll be Thunderbolt, yeah. It's also possible that they might have some low-level models with USB-C, but which are not Thunderbolt again. So that like a replacement for the 12-inch MacBook when they come out with that Apple Silicon is a possibility. And iPads so far are USB-C, not Thunderbolt. So those ones don't support Thunderbolt peripherals of any kind. Now, going back to Peter's question earlier, when you're buying an external drive, there's no reason to buy one of these things as Thunderbolt, because if you're comparing it to the speed of an external hard drive, this is already about 10 times faster than external hard drives. And that's only the data transfer rate. It doesn't have any physically moving parts, so therefore there's no head movement delays. The only reason to go to Thunderbolt for external storage is when you are dealing with professional level multiple drive systems where you need to transfer gigabytes of data very, very quickly and guarantee that it's going to get there in a hurry, for doing things like video recording and that sort of thing, or video editing and audio editing, that sort of task. So those systems are accordingly very expensive. So if you buy, you can buy a Thunderbolt variation of this one, I think it's a Samsung X5 or something like that, it's about 4 times more expensive. Or something like that. I've never bothered considering it. Ish, yeah, I mean, I can look them up. Let's have a look on, just for an idea, so I can't remember the numbers. It's called a Samsung T5. I've previously searched. I'll just share my screen so other people can see it. T for Terry. Where's he gone? Samsung T5, search. Didn't actually find the results. So, no. It's not finding it. Why isn't it? Hard drives external will be under. Okay, so the T7 is the new series. The T7 Touch has actually got an extra feature of fingerprint sensor that unlocks the device, so you can use it for extra security. I don't see much point buying one of those. You have to then run Samsung's software, which I don't know if I trust. So the T7 is the newer, faster model, and that's the 500 gig one for $169. Yes, USB 3.2 Gen 2, 10 gigabits per second. So that's the maximum speed you can get out of it. So they're $169 for a 500 gig, $299 for a 1 terabyte, and these are on special as well at the moment, it seems, and $539 for a 2 terabyte. So they're getting quite expensive at that capacity. So I didn't mind spending $300-ish for one of them. I bought the blue one. And then do they still have the T5s? They don't appear to. The price difference between them was getting quite small, so it's quite possible what's happened is they've just stopped selling the T5s because the T7's come down at the same price. It was only like $30 cheaper, if that. God knows. AliExpress, yeah, they'll probably sell you a Samsung or something.
Extra computer inside.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's those, I quite like those. They seem to work quite well. I now own 4 of them, I think. Yeah, bought over a period of a couple of years, I think. So,
so for ordinary backup, you might just get one.
Well, if you're just talking about a time machine backup drive, they're probably a bit too small capacity. It's going to be nice having a solid state drive as a time machine backup, and with Big Sur, they're going to add the ability to have APFS on your backup drive, so that makes more sense then to have a solid state drive. Whereas previously, it's a new file system that Apple introduced with High Sierra, which only is optimized. It's optimized for solid state drives. Doesn't work so well on hard drives. But Big Sur makes it possible to actually use the new file system on backup drives for Time Machine as well as on the internal drive, which has potential advantages for reliability, because Time Machine is a rather major hodgepodge of features to make it work the way it does, and the new file system has actually got some features which make that easier to implement, so it's possibly more reliable long term, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm not in any hurry to upgrade to Big Sur. I have to wait and find out anyway, because we don't even know the timing yet. So, but my new Mac is still on Catalina and may end up being on Big Sur rather than Catalina once it's available. So, yeah. But yeah, as I mentioned in my article, which nobody's read yet, 10.15.7 fixed a few bugs. I think Wi-Fi. The new 27-inch iMacs, one of the graphics cards had weird problems that they've fixed. There was one other bug fix. I've forgotten what the other one was, and nothing else really was mentioned apart from some security fixes. But one thing they did do was they updated the mail application and didn't say what they'd done to it. So at the moment, I don't know if the mail bug with the moving messages is still there or not, because the only comment I've seen about it so far is the problem's still there and somebody's asked him for clarification and he hasn't replied. We don't know which problem he's talking about. And he wasn't talking about 10.15.7, he was talking about 10.15.5. So yeah, the difficulty is that Apple isn't acknowledging this problem exists and it doesn't seem to be widespread knowledge. So I don't even know how common it is. So it's a bit of a dog's breakfast, unfortunately. Okay, 10 o'clock.
USB-C. I mean,
what sorry, Margaret?
That wonderful widget you told me to buy, which I did, that had all the things that you could plug in from, you know, from USBs to Ethernet to this, that, and the other USB cards and all. That USB-C, can I plug that into my Mac? I was assumed I could only plug it into my phone.
Yeah, I'll grab mine. Hang on.
Yeah, I just can't. I've put mine somewhere and I can't lay a finger on it right now.
It's one of these sorts of things. Yeah. So it's got a USB-C plug. They vary a little bit in appearance, and it's got like SD slots, USB slots, HDMI,
I plug that into my Mac.
USB in, Ethernet, and that will work fine with a Mac, which has got USB-C. So you just plug it into your Mac via a Thunderbolt port, and it gives you effectively another Ethernet and more USB ports and whatever else you need. So they work with laptops and desktops.
Yeah, see, I thought they were different. So,
but like, this is my 16-inch MacBook Pro with USB Thunderbolt 3 ports on it, and if I just plug it into one of those, if I can aim right, that's what it's intended for, and it's even color-coded to match it. But that would then work fine in an iMac as well, for example, as long as the iMac's got Thunderbolt 3 ports on it.
So is it
this is not Thunderbolt, this is just USB.
Is it as powerful? Does this work okay? Is it as powerful, the USB-C, as the Thunderbolt?
Well, it's slower. So the advantage of Thunderbolt mainly is it's much faster. If you want to plug in a lot of external devices regularly, a Thunderbolt dock is the best option, but it's a lot more expensive than a USB-C dock, but it's also a lot faster.
Yeah, it's quite enough.
Yeah.
Thanks, David. Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to a close because we've got too much background noise. Thank you, folks, and sorry for the delay.